I think it says a lot on Chelsea's end that aerially last season was a problem in terms of height. Only Kurt Zouma, who had the more superior aerial duel wins. They've gone out this summer. They've gone to get a 6'5" goalkeeper. They've gone to get a 6 feet Thiago Silva. They've gone to get a 6'2" Kai Havertz, who unfortunately isn't involved today because of COVID-19. But that just, obviously, largely the credit also goes to the coaching staff and the recruitment staff as well. But that just shows the attention to detail, doesn't it, from Frank Lampard himself, Mario?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, look, I don't want to forget Jody Morris because I played with both of them, you know, with Frank and Jody. The thing is that both coaches are very familiar, especially Jody, is familiar with the younger players, and I feel Frank is probably taking them more senior to his level. But when it comes to height, those are one of the things that both players had in their team. You understand? If you look at both players, they had a height. They might haven't been the tallest themselves because Jody is short himself. But then bringing in some capabilities that can attack the ball the way Silva did is just crucial. And I think defensively, you got to make sure it's solid at the back, though you don't concede easily. And then going forward, you got to make sure that you can attack it. They had a John Terry in the team when they both played, and he was very good at that. You understand? Attacking the ball and really making it his. But now, the way Silva did that, it was actually a player that they brought into the system. I don't want to compare him to a player in England because then you kind of disrespect him because of the achievement and the career he had. But if you look at a Van Dijk, what he did for Liverpool, company, what he meant for City, that they sometimes even struggle now still to, you know, find a gap to replace him. But if you look at the calmness that a center half brings into the team, and I think that's why they bought Silva. Silva came, you understand, just the focus of Silva was how can you steady the ship at the back? Because soon as we can take away the unsteady balance, it becomes a whole different team because the forwards we already got in place. And I think that's what Chelsea is doing right now.
You're right. He does add that calmness to that backline because we saw how after conceding that first goal, the defence, Chelsea's defence, resettled, reshuffled and reorganised themselves so quickly they didn't let that goal faze them at all. And that's the impact of a great player. And when he was first brought in, there were it perhaps raised a bit of eyebrows because of his age. It didn't fit your typical profile of what Frank Lampard wants. But if anything, he is likely to be one of the most impactful signing. More because, as well, they got him on a free, Gary.
Well, you know, you look at Thiago Silva, 36 years of age. People start to say, well, he's in the twilight of his career. He looks like a 26-year-old, to be honest with you, not only in appearance, but in his movement as well. You know, he looks like he plays with a smile on his face. He's loving his football. He's enjoying his football, which for me is a huge part and a really big contributing factor for players performing well. You know, you have to be enjoying it. If you're not happy, then you aren't going to perform. You know, I think it was his debut against West Bromwich Albion. He made a mistake and Chelsea were 3-0 down at half-time, weren't they? But, you know, that didn't affect him. It didn't faze him. And the reason it didn't, as per with Chelsea going a goal behind today, is because he's an experienced player. You know, he's seen just about everything there is to see in the world of football. And he knows that it's about performing consistently across 90 minutes, regardless of any mistakes that you may or may not make. It's about getting back on track. And defensively now, Chelsea are certainly on track. And with all that attacking quality at the other end, they will perform better off the basis of a strong, solid defence. And, you know, from the early stages of this season where there was lots of question marks about Chelsea, I think most of those question marks have now gone.
That winning mentality as well, I think, must have rubbed off the likes of Kurt Zouma and all the players around him. It probably does benefit that back line as well, that Silva, Mendy and Kurt Zouma all speak French. So they've got this communication, they've got this chemistry going as well. It is to my understanding that Thiago Silva is still learning English at this point. Jorginho is taking the task of teaching him how to speak English. But being a leadership figure in that dressing room and on the pitch, can language be a barrier, Mario? Because you've played in a side, in the Chelsea side, they've got plenty of different nationalities. Everyone spoke different languages. How did you guys communicate?
Yeah, no, it's true. Like, okay, for me, actually in Holland, everybody speaks English, so that was my advantage. But definitely when I came to France, for example, and where Silva was a captain too, you try to learn the language as quick as you can because then you can feel comfortable. He gave him the captaincy. He must give him the captaincy because he has a form of communication going already. Because if Frank gives you the captaincy, he must be able to communicate with you. So I think that is one of the skills that Silva is probably already pushing towards. And of course, what you just highlighted, Michel, from him be able to talk to Zuma and Mendy in a certain language that they all three understand, of course, brings that. And Kante, don't forget Kante in front of him. That's comfort zone. If he can handle that circle around him, and then he can build from there on and make it even more comfortable. I mean, I'm sure if we talk about language, Kovacic, I'm sure he speaks very good Spanish, so he can speak to him in Portuguese and manage to do that. But away from that, yeah, I totally agree. The language is always the key to learn very quickly when you come in to a country. But it's also not only based on learning the language for that reason, it's also respect. Respect the area where you are, because that can help you in the way of advancing your way of playing. And that's why he gave him the captaincy. And it's beautiful to see, because that means that Frank Lampard is very confident about the man that he brought into his side.
But when you were with Chelsea then, because I remember it was a period of time, well, you weren't in the starting lineup, but that was a period of time where there were a lot of foreign players there. If I'm not mistaken, Chelsea fielded the first ever fully non-British starting 11. That was kind of the conversation around it. In your dressing room then, at that period, Mario, did you have a translator for every person? How did you guys communicate? How do you give instructions on the pitch? How did that work out?
We at the time when I was there, I mean, Desailly was our captain, Master Desailly. The comfort zone for us was more like football. Sometimes I'm sure Gary would really agree with this. We don't always have to talk, because when it comes to football, it's also chemistry. It's the because if you're in a full stadium in England, sometimes you will not be able to speak, especially when it comes to Wembley. There were days when I played there, and you couldn't even communicate to each other. So the only way you could do is wave or give a sign to each other. And I think that when it comes to football as well on the field, the higher the level you become as a player, the less communication happens, because it becomes more training method that you use, or more instinctively, you got to understand each other. And I think that was one of the key things that we had at the Chelsea side. And of course, we had a lot of foreigners in it, but we have one goal. Everybody try to win every game. And I think that's one of the key things when you play football.
Well, Gary, you've managed in a totally different country, in a country that probably that may not speak English as their first language. Did you find language being a barrier in football?
Well, I think the honest answer to that is yes. I was in Azerbaijan for a couple of years coaching as an assistant manager there. And I've spent a number of seasons in Thailand as well. Languages aren't my strong suit, I have to be honest with you. So I work predominantly with a translator. And the problem with that is that words do get lost in translation. So I had to work a lot harder with my players on the pitch, on the training park, between games, in order to show them what I wanted, to put them in the right positions at the right times, and to develop that understanding and relationship amongst the players. I wished I could speak more Thai than I can. I wished I could speak more Azeri than I learned in the couple of years I was there. But I didn't, and you have to make the best of it. But, I would have thought that basically the rule is, if you're in the changing room in England, in the Premier League, you have to speak English, especially if your head coach is Frank Lampard, who is English. It's as simple as that for me.